chat. How are we doing this fine morning? What the hell? I apparently have stuff in frame that I'm not supposed to have in frame. Well then, professionalism as always. What can I say? Okay, so it's pretty rare that I get Super Chat to tell me to say what it is that I should say all on my little lonesome. So I think we're just going to read that as it is. At least to start the show, because Sam Nope for $3. Reminder for those still on YouTube, Entropy Chat can speak freely, allows you to log in using a basic YouTube Gmail account, and the question widget allows other users to promote relevant queries to the top. Sam Nope for $3, and it's a platform developed by people who will not insist that you eat the dick nor suck the bug. Indeed. Thank you very much, Sam Nope. And you are completely 100% correct. So, if you're on YouTube and you're looking for YouTube chat and noticing that I am indeed paying attention to chat at any given point and saying, why can't I see YouTube chat? Is YouTube broken? No, YouTube is not broken. I just do not run a YouTube chat because YouTube sucks. So, instead, there is Entropy, Trovo, DLive, if you absolutely must, because we'll be leaving DLive soon, too, I'm pretty sure. We need to get off the platforms that suck, and those ones do. What can I say? All right. So, before we jump into the manual again, there is a thing going on that there is some possibility I will make a separate video unto itself for, presuming I have time, and that is the gas shortage thing. And apparently, people either are blowing this entirely out of proportion or have no idea that it's going on, so I guess I should say something about it. And if you're watching this later and you're going, Don, I don't really care about the gas shortage, I apologize, but it is somewhat relevant to what we're doing here. So for those that don't know, the fuel line that runs from Texas to the East Coast got hacked, and so just shy of 50% of the fuel that powers the East Coast is no longer available to the East Coast, and it is exploding gas prices. There's all kinds of $5, $6, $7, $10 a gallon kind of things going around, not to mention gas lines. It looks like 1970 if you've seen pictures, blah, blah, blah. This is the kind of thing that is otherwise called denying the enemy. And it's worth noting that the enemy to the people involved here are, well, everybody, really. I know that a lot of this series talks about how we of the right are the enemy as far as the people running coin operations. And look, we'll get to speculation on who is doing those sorts of things probably near the end of this series. But regardless, for the moment, what we've got is that the one thing the U.S. government pretty universally should be in charge of doing is protecting American assets from foreign enemies. That's its job. And, of course, it will do nothing about this. It has issued statements saying it will do nothing about this. And who is it that's actually going to have a problem here? It's not going to be the government, right? The feds will buy gas at $25 a gallon. They don't care. They will just tax you to be able to pay for it and or borrow money, which is at least as likely. So it is just you, the random citizen, who will feel the pain from this. If you are in anywhere on the East Coast at this point, it really looks like you're sitting in line for an hour to be able to get gas, and when you finally get up there, presuming that they actually have gas, you will be paying somewhere between $6 and $8 a gallon for it. This denies your ability to do anything. That's the point, right? So, a little bit of why is this such a big deal. Well, realistically, because people are panicking about it. That's why. And this is one of those things of I'll probably make a little separate video about it because this is all stuff that we should have learned back in the 70s, and yet we didn't because we're idiots. All right. Anyway, I realize that that's not very in-depth and not very this channel-like, but there's your reasoning. Oh, why is this relevant to coin operations? If by chance you're in the Middle East and, I don't know, some random state entity that is not in your area of operations burns down all of the heroin fields that ISIS uses to fund itself, well, you don't go out of your way to fix that. You just go, that sounds like a you problem, right? And that presumes, of course, that the U.S. government is involved in some way or another with whatever is going on with this gas line, which I'm not here to speculate. I don't really care. The simple reality is if somebody else is interrupting the enemy, then you kind of just leave them alone. You let that situation play out, and you go, well, I'd help if I could, I guess. But you can't you really don't want to. And that's basically what you're seeing play out with this damn gas line, is that if you are running coin operations, right, and you don't want the enemy to travel far and wide, then if something impacts their ability to travel far and wide, you leave it alone. And that's what they're doing. And keep in mind, these are the people who want to move everybody into cities so that they can live in a pod and eat the bug and suck the dick, as Super Chat or Paid Chat, whatever it is, has already suggested. We're not going to sit here and debate gas things. It's not going to happen. Again, we'll do it later. All right, moving on. So, a government willingness to seek a negotiated settlement with insurgents. The negotiated settlement is a progressive process involving a number of steps. A negotiated settlement is likely to have many false starts, delays in implementation, and attempts by spoilers to undermine the agreement. Moreover, the risk of renewed violence, either by the original insurgent organization protesting perceived government duplicity or by splinter groups unsatisfied with the terms of the settlement, might persist for several years after fighting has officially ended. Recognizing sincere efforts to reach a negotiated settlement can be difficult because insurgents often conduct negotiations to buy time to recover from setbacks and to prepare for the next round of fighting. If the conflict has been protracted, the insurgents' expectation of a purely military victory will probably be tempered, and they will be more willing to seek genuine compromise. The insurgents are unlikely to reach this conclusion until they have been fighting for some time, suggesting that sometimes an insurgent conflict needs to run its course for a while before serious negotiations are possible. The first part of the process usually starts with a military stalemate. The host nation government should accept the insurgency can operate as a legitimate negotiator in the process to reach a political solution. A negotiated settlement will usually have intermediate agreements, concessions, ascensions of moderate leaders, and often a guarantor. Ceasefires may be routinely broken to force changes in relative negotiating position. Indicators insurgents are sincere in their negotiation or their desire for negotiation include reports neither side believes it can win militarily. 2. Reports the insurgents believe they can win an election or otherwise achieve their goals through legal political participation. 3. A moderation of insurgent goals, incorporation into the government's negotiating position of a liberal amnesty offer and mechanisms for former insurgents to participate in the legal political process. 4. A dramatic and or unexpected battlefield victory followed by overtures to negotiate. Since neither party wants to negotiate from a position of weakness, a belligerent on the decline may seek a symbolic victory to improve its bargaining position. 5. Evidence foreign patrons or allies are cutting off support or are pressing the insurgents or the government to negotiate. 6. A change of government that brings to power a strong leader whom the insurgents view as personally committed to resolving the conflict and capable of ensuring the compliance of other government elements. 7. Willingness of both sides to accept mediation and monitoring of a ceasefire and the eventual implementation of an agreement. Okay. I want you to... I realize that that was a lot of just stock reading, but I want you to take that reading and look at the way Joe Biden is portrayed in the media. Look at the violence of January 6th. Look at the violence of white supremacists, right? This is being portrayed as though there is an insurgency, and that insurgency is ticking, say, 2 or 3 at bare minimum of these boxes, right? Reports that neither side believes it can win militarily. The government clearly thinks it can. Go look at your Swalwells of the world.
We'll just nuke gun owners. Who cares about your AR-15?
Reports that insurgents believe they can win an election or otherwise achieve their goals through legal political process. So, this is part of why fortification is verboten to speak of. If the insurgents, you, and again, I know this better applies to Antifa than the right, but if the insurgents, you, don't believe you can win political elections, then we have to go to overt warfare. That is the suggestion here. That is the thing that is hypothetically to be avoided. The right must be pushed as hard and as far as it can without going to guns. This is why a lot of them don't like people like Dale, who will say, go to guns now, etc. On and on and on it goes. They are playing this game as best they can to keep the right looking like an open violent insurgency without actually being an open violent insurgency, so that the right negotiates. This, combined with general political incentives to not do violence-related things, is why the right cucks on everything, is basically what it comes down to. They are being played overtly and covertly. It's just the way that it is. It's why you see the left champion the Liz Cheneys of the world. Yes, I know she was removed from office this morning, or whatever position she was in, but it's why you see them champion people like her, because she pushes the right to the negotiating table, regardless of whether or not any of you think she is part of the right, and it doesn't really matter. Al-Qaeda and ISIS have slightly different views of Islamic Jihad and how terrible it should be, but they'll work together just fine. So if you can move Al-Qaeda to do something, it influences ISIS at bare minimum insofar as they lose allies. So this is the kind of thing that you're looking for if you're running a coin operation. This is why you want Liz Cheney's to come out and go, oh, yeah, Trump is evil, man, and whatever other ridiculous things that she is saying on any given day. It's also why, number 7 here, willingness of both sides to accept mediation and monitoring of a ceasefire and the eventual implementation of an agreement. This is the kind of thing, by the way, that when earlier last year the Democrats were out there going, well, I don't think you're allowed to say guns on YouTube. You have to say pew pew sticks. Guns. Anyway, the reality of this is back last year in the May time frame when the Democrats were calling for the UN to come in and monitor American elections. By the way, when I said this is going to sound a lot like Yuri's subversion talk, it's going to sound like Leninism, it's not by accident, right? These things are basically all the same premise. This is just codified slightly differently. It's not really a surprise. Okay. Government victory. 1. A government victory can be a protracted process marked by gradual decline in violence as the insurgents lose military capabilities, external assistance, and popular support. Low-level violence may persist for years, and lacking a climactic final battle, the end will probably be indistinct. However, in some recent cases, such as Sri Lanka and the Democratic Republic of Congo, there have been decisive counterinsurgent military victories. A. As the government succeeds in reducing the number of insurgents and the size of their infrastructure, the insurgents become harder to find and eliminate. B. If the conflict has lasted a long time, insurgency may have become a way of life for many fighters, and the violence may continue long after the insurgents have abandoned any hope of achieving their goals. The conflict is even more likely to persist if the insurgents have become heavily involved in criminal activities, i.e., drug trafficking, smuggling, or resource plunder, which can become the insurgency's primary reason for existence. Okay, so why are laws applied horrifically disproportionately, right? Why is it that the right is punished mercilessly if it gets involved in anything to do with crime and the left is not? Because the right are the insurgents, right? And so dissuading the right from, I don't know, creating a cocaine empire, right? You're not allowed to become Scarface, because if you become Scarface, you have an ongoing monetary source that you're going to need to do things to protect. It's going to be part of your life in general. And because you are now outside of the mainstream culture ability to, transact normally, you're unlikely to give up on your insurgency. If we can come to the table with some promise that you can go back to grilling, if you still work at, I don't know, Walmart or whatever, then you might go back to grilling. But if you have a cocaine empire, they're going to have to end the war on drugs to let you go back to grilling, which they're not going to do. So the more that they can keep you intertwined in the regular culture, doing things that are legal, the better off their chances of having a successful coin operation are. If you sell heroin, what are you going to open Bob's Heroin in 7-Eleven? It's not going to happen. Kind of like opium. Yes. 2. Signs of an impending government victory might be ambiguous and seem more like atmospherics than specific indicators. Evidence of daily life returning to normal, government services and administration fully functioning, and government forces operating nationwide probably suggest the government has effectively defeated or contained the insurgency. Other specific signs that can signal a government victory include commercial activity increases, markets reopen, and businesses remain open after dark. Again, before one of you furiously types,
Oh my god, it's like if Antifa left the major cities.
yes, a more accurate description by any stretch of the imagination is going to be that this manual should be what we're doing to fight Antifa. Antifa is not the insurgency according to the powers that be. And it doesn't matter how many times you spurgishly post, Antifa. They're not suddenly going to decide Antifa's the problem. Antifa's the solution, right? You are the problem. So, this is the kind of thing that why the left stops paying attention to the right when the right stops boycotting, stops protesting, etc. Everything went back to normal. You gave up. That's it. It's over. B. Civilians feel safe enough to leave their homes at night. C. Refugees or internally displaced persons voluntarily return to their homes. Once again, the right moving back to cities. D. Civilians openly interact with officials or security force personnel. This is why they hate sovereign citizens. And I don't care what you think of sovereign citizens. I'm not here to openly support. I'm an Article 71 free inhabitant. I'm not a citizen of the United States. I don't really care what you think. Doesn't really matter. There are plenty of other times to discuss sovereign citizens. However, sovereign citizens are the anathema of this argument. They are precisely the opposite of civilians openly interacting with officials or security force personnel. It's also why nobody effectively likes it when the cops, well, your lawyer does, but nobody else does, because right-wing lawyers, again, the insurgency, right? when you tell a cop, look, I'm not going to tell you anything. The Fifth Amendment still exists, so no, right? So you, by nature of not loving Big Brother and the state, part of your insurgency activities, you're not openly interacting with officials or security force personnel. That's bad. That's a bad sign. Civilians promptly alert security forces to the presence of insurgents. Once we started the Karen secret police, that was a sign of victory. It was. Don't have to like that, but you not wearing a mask identifies you as one of the insurgents. The Karen secret police will report you. Not really a shock. F. Officials can travel with minimal security and can spend their nights in areas that were formerly unsafe. Now, this is a thing that is all propaganda, right? But you see the AOCs of the world talking about this objective, right?
Oh my God, there's no way I could go to the right-wing parts of the country because they'll kill me.
It doesn't happen, but you have to establish the threat so that you can overcome it, so that you can say that you won, right? This is the same kind of nonsense you get with actually tons of left-wing politicians. Oh my God, the right's out there, they're going to kill us. And so when they walk into these places, that will be a sign that they think they have overcome this portion, right? Or rather, they no longer need the propaganda. But it will be a sign of them thinking that they have won enough that they can pretend like they have overcome this thing. Government offices are open and functioning normally. I don't even know what that means in this country. Government offices in this country are always open and they always suck. Even when they're closed, they're open. Just ask them. They'll tell you. Security forces, even in small units, are able to operate throughout the country, including in formerly insurgent-held areas. So this right here, again, it's going to be a little bit of a toss-up of who exactly they're talking about, but they're sort of talking about federal agents here, right? Because there's not an outside security force. It's just us. Though, even here, again, I know, done, but like, all the cops that are like getting shot at are by like lefties, man. Look at the Boog Boys discussion, right? The far right wing Boog Boys who want the second Civil War. Civil War II, Electric Boogaloo. They're all far righty, far rightness, and they are attacking police officers. Even if any of that was true, it's basically only ever happened once, and the left attacks police officers on like an hourly basis. Yeah, I got it. Again, you're the insurgency. Violence needs to be attributed to you. This is why the Boog Boys are far right, even though they're mostly communist. Still, this is the premise, and so when cops can go around and not be attacked by Boog Boys, that's what they're talking about. Specifically, in this case, for security force things, it's going to be more like the FBI and the ATF, even though nobody attacks the FBI and the ATF. The FBI and the ATF attack other people. That's what Waco is. Police reclaim responsibility for security, and the military largely returns to base. So this is going to be the line of taking down the wall in D.C., right? You need, again, the propaganda of this idea that there is some giant insurgency and it's violent. And so this is, they will act like this has been accomplished, even though it was always accomplished, the moment that they take down the wall. Again, it's not that it matters that they're actually doing this. Most of this is still a propaganda war. What these things are about is whether or not they think they've won to some degree. And for those of you who are like, Don, how can you predict, when it is that they think they've won and blah, blah, blah? This is how, right? I mean, they spell it out in actual bullet points for you. Chapter 2. Congratulations. At 61 pages, we have finally made Chapter 2. Small Wars Manual, United States Marine Corps, 1940. In small wars, caution should be exercised instead of striving to generate the maximum power with the forces available. The goal is to gain decisive results with the least application of force. In small wars, tolerance, sympathy, and kindness should be the keynote of our relationship with the mass of the population. Small wars involve a wide range of activities, including diplomacy, contacts with the civilian population, and warfare of the most difficult kind. I want you to stop and think about that little paragraph right there and think about every headline that you have seen about Joe Biden. Every single one. Tolerance, sympathy, and kindness. What is it that is said about Biden? Everywhere.
Oh, he's so kind. He's so sympathetic. He's uniting.
The only people, and I realize that anyone with half a brain cell who listens to Biden talk says, man, he's talking about half the country. But the only people that Biden goes after are the insurgents. That's who he talks about pejoratively. That's it. Everyone else, good Americans, right? Overview. Coin is a... I apologize for the repetitiveness. Overview. COIN is the blend of comprehensive civilian and military efforts designed to simultaneously defeat and contain insurgency and address its root causes. Some of the key objectives of COIN operations are to reduce violence, address core grievances, and enable the host nation government to exercise political control over its population territory via a system of legitimate governance. Therefore, COIN is fundamentally an armed political competition between a government and its partners and the insurgents and their supporters. Military operations to kill or capture insurgents, degrade their capabilities, and disrupt their organizations are a critical element of a broader comprehensive approach. However, COIN is a complex, protracted effort that often requires the interrogation of capabilities typically associated with peace operations, foreign humanitarian assistance, stability actions. Oh my God. SC. Let's find out here. Security, cooperation, FID. My God, with the friggin' foreign internal defense, and CT, I think that's counterterrorism. CT, counterterrorism, sure enough. With those numerous interagency partners to help the host nation government marginalize insurgents and win support of the population. Governments often severely underestimate the financial, political, military, and human costs required to prevail in COIN. Well, go look at the national debt. That's what it's costing. I hate manuals like this. Makes it seem insurmountable task to defeat, which I suppose is kind of the point. So, understand that this is not a play, right? This is not the script of a play. This is not a movie or the script of a movie. This is the list of things to do. It's very comprehensive. It goes over a lot of things. And it is a good manual insofar as that it does a lot to accomplish its objectives. It is not history written from the future, right? None of this is guaranteed. A lot of this is worth noting because we can do it right back. And realistically, we can do it a lot cheaper than they can because you are kind of the insurgency. And the insurgency can do a lot of things a lot cheaper than the host nation security forces. So, You don't have to fall into any of the numerous traps that this manual will advocate that you fall into. In fact, use it as a how do we move forward ourselves. And it is not only not a black pill, it is just as much an instruction manual for you as it is for our opposition. Keep that in mind, because the only thing that designates which side is doing coin operations is basically whoever said out loud they're doing coin operations. That's it, right? In a purely tactical sense, Al-Qaeda was doing coin operations. They were. This was the mechanics of what they were doing. They just ended up effectively fighting the whole world, which is not a viable or reasonable fight. Unless the whole world rolls into the United States, we're still only fighting the U.S. government. Okay. 1. Coin approaches should be adaptable and agile. Strategies need to utilize a balanced approach that seeks to affect the population and insurgents. These strategies will seek to reinforce the legitimacy of the affected government while reducing insurgent influence. This can often only be achieved in concert with political reform to improve the quality of governance and address underlying grievances, many of which are legitimate. Okay, this right here, in a meta sense, I guess, is the more you address the material needs of a populace, the less likely they are to be interested in an insurgency. For those of you who have been around for a really long time, you've heard me say repeatedly that Americans are not going to be willing to get up and have a boog unless their cable TV, internet, and McDonald's are interrupted. And that has changed a little bit over the years insofar as I've added internet, but the point remains the same. It's bread and circuses. It doesn't matter how you rephrase it. As long as people are generally materially satisfied, they're a lot less interested in insurgencies. And that's basically what they're talking about here, right? If you go to the Middle East, who otherwise does not have running water and sewer, right? And you go, hey, look, so the government is going to come in here and make sure that there's not a lot of violence. We're going to get you running clean water and running sewer. You want to just not support the insurgents so we can do that? That sounds like a good thing if you're a guy who, or a woman, as it were, who carries a bucket on the top of your head 50 miles to go get the day's water. So, stimulus checks, yes, that's accurate, right? It's the same sort of thing. If you're allowed to play video games, watch TV, watch YouTube, then you are much less likely to be getting up, getting angry, protesting, etc., and subsequently, because again, this manual is a lot about violence, you are much less likely to get up and pick up a rifle. This goes right along with if you have a mortgage, you're less likely to pick up a rifle. If you have a car payment, kids, you just want to grill, and you feel vaguely enabled to just grill, the likelihood that you pick up a gun and go actually start a war becomes dramatically lower. So as long as the government can manage a somewhat peaceful-looking day-to-day materialistic life where your needs are sated and a little bit of your wants are sated as well, the likelihood that you will be a part of an insurgency drops dramatically. You need, at that point, an ideological line that supersedes material concerns, and for most people, that line doesn't exist. For everyone who's like, how do we convince the normies to get up and fight this? You don't. They look. There's a roof over my head, food in my belly, and TV on. That's it. I'm done. I'm good. Right? I don't need anything else. For the vast majority of people. And so when you discuss abstract ideas like liberty or socialism or any of these things, and I know they're not really abstract ideas, but they are to someone who works 50 hours a week because that's what they know they're supposed to do so that they can, drink beer and, do whatever on Friday nights. Those things are their priorities. And you need something more important to them than that to convince them to get up and get off the couch, and you probably don't have it. This, by the way, is why going after children is a big issue, right? This is why going after guns is a big issue, because these are things, if they were actually going door to door and not individually taking people's guns for good reason, then people might get up and get upset about it. But as long as it's not everybody, then you don't have that problem, right? This is why red flag laws are a substantially better idea than open gun confiscation. Because you can go, well, that guy was part of the insurgent force. We had to take his guns. And if you just go to door and take everybody's guns, now you've angered the population. Since U.S. coin operations will normally involve support to a foreign government, either independently or as part of an international organization or multinational force, success will often depend on the willingness of that government to undertake the necessary political changes, if applicable. However great its know-how and enthusiasm, the outside organization, e.g. U.S. government, cannot fully compensate for lack of will, incapacity, or counterproductive behavior on the part of the supported host nation government. This is why they hate DeSantis. Seriously. DeSantis overwhelmingly has no will of any variety to do any of this stuff, right? He is not on board. This is not, it's not even about whether or not he's excited for the end. He just simply has no will to do it. It would help if he was excited, but the excitement is actually not necessary. Even if he was doing it kind of unwillingly, which is, this is the story, the openly said story of leftist states. You've got Gavin Newsom, well, I guess we'll just have to lock down. Yeah, except that you want it, right? So if you have a host nation that has no will to do whatever it is that you want done, they're a bigger problem than one who will do it begrudgingly. B. Every insurgency is unique. Reestablishing the host nation control and perceived legitimacy requires a coherent, realistic political strategy that is focused on addressing the opportunity, motive, and means at the root of the insurgency. Likewise, a coin operation or campaign to implement that strategy should be carefully aligned to the particular nature of the insurgency, the physical, economic, political, and human dimensions of the operating environment, and the nature of the host nation government and its security forces. C. Effective and legitimate forms of host nation governance may differ slightly from Western models. They may involve decentralized authority, a blend of formal and informal governance, and or very different expectations about the role of the state in the lives of its citizens. There is no universal model to succeed. Both the political military strategy and the operational approach to coin should be adapted to local conditions. Okay, so this is, again, just be flexible. However, there's a thing that's just glossed over at the beginning of this. Effective and legitimate forms of host nation government may differ significantly from Western models. They may involve decentralized authority. What? This is accidentally saying the quiet part out loud. This is, yeah, we think Western governments are what amounts to a tyranny of the majority. We think that they have the centralized Stalinist type government, and other people might not have that. So, oops. D. All governments rule through a combination of consent and coercion. Governments described as legitimate tend to rule primarily with the consent of the governed and strictly limit their use of coercion against their citizens to that which is necessary for the enforcement of well-defined criminal and civil law. Those described as illegitimate tend to rely more heavily on coercion to maintain control and suppress peaceful political contention. Citizens of the latter obey the state for the fear of the consequences of doing otherwise, rather than because they voluntarily accept its rule. While even a legitimate government may use coercion to enforce the law, most of its citizens voluntarily accept its authority to govern. Legitimate governance is inherently more stable. The societal support it engenders allows it to adequately manage internal problems, change, and conflict. This is why Joe Biden supposedly has a 60% approval rating. This is why Trump supposedly had a 40% approval rating. This is why Congress has a crappy approval rating, right? I mean, at this point, if you're not aware that polls are pretty well manipulated to the point of being effectively useless, I don't really want to tell you they are, but Congress is not a thing that centralized governments want. It is, whether anybody likes it or not, a way for the plebs of the world to get somebody into office who goes, yeah, that's enough of this. Go look at the Marjorie Taylor Greenes of the world. That lady shouldn't be in power according to the powers that be. She is definitely a part of the insurgency. So, you need to astroturf the idea that the government that the U.S. government forces has popular support. You do. Specifically, if they don't, you have to astroturf it. If they do, well, then good enough. But you need, through things like, and make no mistake, some of the Joe Biden approval rating is correct. Some portion of people do approve of what he's doing. However, the premise that 60% of the country approves is complete bullshit. And I think at this point, everybody knows it, right? Again, gas shortages tend to be a thing that destroy government approval ratings, and yet, somehow, everybody still approves of what Biden is doing. I don't believe you. So, here's the shtick, right? They need to at least appear to be a legitimate government. Now, anybody who has any idea what this is talking about will know immediately that, well, we need mask mandates is the government being illegitimate and using heavy amounts of coercion in every aspect of a human being's life, and yet somehow or another we're expected to believe that it's still legitimate government because people are just doing it, even though we know they aren't. Okay. E. The struggle for legitimacy in the eyes of the relevant population is typically a central theme of the conflict between the insurgency and the host nation government. Insurgents exploit the host nation government's loss of legitimacy with one part of the population to launch an operation or campaign to extend their influence and control over and control over the rest of the populace. Insurgencies employ a mixture of violence, subversion, and governance to establish a system of competitive control, undermining the legitimacy of the host nation government and buttress their own legitimacy. Coin should reduce the credibility of the insurgency while strengthening the legitimacy of the host nation government. The joint force should normally establish and maintain legitimacy with both the host nation government and the indigenous population. In accordance with the law of war and higher guidance, commanders should ensure actions are legal and just, increasing the chance for favorable public opinion and support of sustained coin operations. Counterinsurgents achieve this objective by undertaking appropriate actions and striving for a balanced application of force that creates lethal and or non-lethal effects as desired by local circumstance. Okay, so science, right? It doesn't matter that Texas opens and all of their numbers get better. It doesn't matter that Florida opens and all their numbers get better. These two states are hiding the real numbers, right? Lord Fauci must be listened and believed, and blah, blah, blah. The legitimacy of the government matters, right? California is doing the right thing. Governor Cuomo is the best example, and he makes me feel warm and cuddly. This is the propaganda war that they're talking about. This is the premise, right? You have to believe that the insurgent governments, the Texases and the South Dakotas and the Floridas and the Wyomings even, are illegitimate in their moves. They are against science, and you have to believe that because that's how they win. Legitimacy in the local context. Legitimacy is achieved by the host nation government through being perceived by the populace as sufficiently effective and credible to meet the expectations of the populace. The host nation government achieves this by providing predictable and acceptable living conditions to the population. Legitimacy is ultimately decided in the minds of the population, and therefore, coin operation works to ensure the host nation government meets the baseline of expectations of the population. You need the what? You need the tacit support of the populace? What? I am shocked and surprised. Different cultures may see acceptable levels of development, corruption, and political participation differently. The importance of securing the population in situations where violence has escalated cannot be overemphasized. Establishing security can win the people's confidence, gain credibility, and enable the host nation government to develop legitimacy in other areas. If the local population considers genocide or the exclusion of some ethnic minorities as legitimate, the joint force will face a particular challenge in working with the host nation government to change these perceptions. Good luck to you. Okay. You know what? I'm not going to harp on that. I already stopped in the middle. Indicators of legitimacy. Possible indicators of legitimacy exist that can be used to analyze threats to stability. For one, a main contributor to legitimacy is the ability to provide security for the populace, including protection from internal and external threats. Let's see here. Another main contributor is the selection of leaders in a manner considered just and fair by a substantial majority of the populace, as established in a constitution, religious text, tribal custom, or similar accepted method. Other indicators of legitimacy may include a level of popular participation in or support for national and local political process that are consistent with local expectations, an acceptable balance between governmental corruption and transparency, a culturally acceptable level and rate of political, economic, and social development, the existence and acceptance of laws or legal system that is predictable and acceptable to the local population, and a high level of acceptance of the pillars of government by major social institutions. I don't think I need to spend any time on that. Success in coin. Non-Western countries may have a different approach and definition of success that may be less population-friendly and more focused on the military defeat of the insurgency. A coin operation may be deemed successful in accordance with Western cultural norms when the following conditions are met. 1. The affected host nation government is able to exercise control over its population and territory via systems of governments that meet the population's expectations. 2. The host nation government has adequate capacity and willingness to address the core grievances of an insurgency. Government corruption is reduced and good governance increases. 3. Host nation security forces establish positive relations with the population, especially in the area of conflict, and have the quality, not just quantity, of sufficient strength to counter the insurgents. Insurgents' violence has been reduced to a level that is manageable by civilian authorities, i.e. law enforcement and security forces of the host nation government. Yeah. 4. Non-indigenous elements of the counterinsurgent forces. Whew. Let's see here. Counterinsurgent forces, i.e. U.S. forces, can terminate combat operations and transition to indirect and/or direct support of... Oh, God damn it. Let's see here. Foreign internal defense. So, where are we at here? U.S. forces can terminate combat operations and transition to indirect and/or direct support foreign internal defense categories, as required by the host nation, without the resurgence of insurgency beyond the capabilities of the host nation. Host nation forces are dominating the offensive simultaneously. Good God. Apparently I'm dying. Simultaneously, external military support for the insurgency is waning. Okay. We've got some time still. Impediments to success. The Joint Force Commander should not assume both the host nation government and the insurgents want a definitive end to the insurgency. Over time, both the host nation government and the insurgents develop a vested interest in the continuation of insurgency-based conflict. For the insurgents, it becomes a way of life. In some insurgencies, like Colombia, there are third and fourth generation insurgents. The more time and effort insurgents give to the insurgency, the less time they have to develop marketable skills. In addition, a war economy develops in which insurgents, criminals, and even corrupt elements of the host nation profit from the conflict through illicit activities, i.e. smuggling, kidnapping, and black markets, and/or the influx of external assistance, i.e. development assistance, commanders, emergency response program spending, economic investment. Moreover, for the host nation government, a continuing insurgency can be a source Moreover, the host nation government, for the host nation government, a continuing insurgency can be a source of continued outside assistance or a method to provide an alibi for certain government actions such as exorbitant security restrictions or punitive reprisals. The government might face lower expectations for economic development and promotion of rights. Hence, the government could benefit from the continuation of an insurgency that does not threaten to overthrow it. Okay, this is talking about the United States overtly. You are a right-wing insurgency that is not going to overthrow the government. Our government may benefit from lower expectations for economic development and the promotion of rights. I would suggest that it is, right? You, anti-vax or whatever it is that makes you, climate change deniers, far-right lunatics, white supremacists, blah, 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 are not in any position to overthrow the U.S. government. And so, rights as a whole are absolutely being destroyed. I think this is where we're going to pause and come back on Friday. There's some possibility that because my mornings are relatively open, I will start producing more of these. So Tuesdays and Thursdays may happen sometimes. I don't want to make any promises there. But it's looking like I might have some time to do that, so look out for those. They will not be regularly scheduled. They will be sporadic, which I'm sure will be bad for views. What are you going to do? Okay. Let's address the 8 billion questions and things that are out there. Let's see here. Anti-commie for $3. Genocide sounds like a hell of a time. Okay. Anti-commie for $7. Just putting this here, Matt Christensen basically has a video saying Don was right. Does he? I mean, most people do, but, they just forget to mention it. That last paragraph is like Palestine, Israel. Yeah, kind of. All right. Let's do some question widget things. Don, please let people know about the video ideas room in the server. You don't know what people don't know. This is how you can know. Indeed. So, one of the various discussions that has come up around here is that I will probably start making some outside of regular content videos for the sake of those of you who come to me and say things like, Don, look, I love the long-form content, but getting people to buy in to an hour to hour and a half stream in the morning it's not very good, so make small videos. And I do this whenever I come up with something that I think there needs to be a video made about. That's probably not as effective as you guys saying, Don, I wish I had small videos that said X, Y, and Z things. So there is now, supposedly, a video ideas channel in the server. So by all means, if there is a thing that you think should be in there, jump into this sort of thing. Say that there needs to be videos about stuff. I have just joined the room as of now because I suck, but it got made, I assume, last night or this morning. So jump in there. They will, look, I can't promise I'll make a video about everything that you guys ask for, but I will try and get to them. As per usual, my production rate on these sorts of things is going to be slow because I suck, and that's how it works. All right. Predictions for gas prices. They gonna go up. And they're going to go up everywhere. As promised, this will be discussed elsewhere. In fact, it might just end up the Friday stream. Let's see here. Despec 1776. It's been $6.80 a gallon here for the longest time. That's not including tax. Jesus. Big Nick. Always remember Joe sniffs kids, Cuomo killed grandmas, and Epstein didn't kill himself. Correct. If you give Don a script and slides, it will be easier for him to make. That is true. However, I don't... you might want to skip the script. Just give me a fact sheet. I've had people who have given me what amounts to a script and slides before, and what ends up happening is I read it and go, I'm not saying that as it's written, and then rewrite it. So people can make their own content and should. Don, do what you do. Indeed. So the point of this is not to give you all like crowdsourcing control of the content on this channel. The point is, by far more, I talk about a ton of stuff. And a lot of it I talk about over and over and over again because it's relevant to, whomever is asking questions about whatever I'm normally talking about, that sort of thing. Equally speaking, there is a lot of... Don, if I had this in, distilled down to 5 minutes, even if it was not comprehensive because it's 5 minutes, then I could give that to people, and then there would be buy-in to get into the rest of the channel, which is a really relevant point and a thing I should do, and have been meaning to do for about a year now. And whenever it is that I come up with something that I think one of those videos needs to be made for, I make it. The thing is, you guys know what you need substantially more than I do. So tell me, and I'll see what I can do to hook that up. All right. On the other hand, Anti-Commie, where the hell's this link? Does the content have to be exclusively about the U.S.? No. I guess not. Somebody asked, what do I think about the French coup that's working on happening over on D Live? Anything? Yeah, any thoughts on the possible French military coup? Yes, I do have some thoughts on it, and mostly those thoughts go something like, we are headed into an era of a lot of global conflict. And that's not a good sign. That's the kind of thing that results in a lot of death, globally speaking. And generally speaking, what comes from that sort of thing happening is a lot of tyranny. So, hooray. Equally speaking, in the world of French coups, it will be very interesting to see if the standing government, the last thing they do is make a call to the UN that says, come in and save me, and then we actually try and do that. It will be a giant thing to look out for, and it will be disastrous if it happens. Let's see here. I wonder if the oil company thing was an inside job, basically. Might be. Does anyone have a funny bone anymore? No. Serious things only. All right. So, in the world of trying to keep these things to about an hour, I think that that's about it. So, thank you all for watching. I will be back no later than Friday. Probably. There's some possibility of me being or doing or something. Other things Friday, but I doubt it. So, in the meantime, thank you all for watching. And remember, fight the progressives wherever you find them, and fight them like your life depends on it. Because it does.